With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down here at the end of the table?
Hey, Mark, I am doing great, and I just got to let all the listeners know that right before we started recording here, Mark, of course, says, just remember, you're always on camera. The cameras don't turn off.
That's right.
So just something to get us started with here.
That's right. I just want everybody to know that, we're always going to be on camera, and I feel like I have to dodge and
I know these cameras are
around to see you down there, Matt.
Right in the way.
So how you doing, man? You doing all right?
Yeah, I am doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. I'm happy to do this episode. This is a great show. We had these guys on last year, and I'm excited to get them back with us again. But before we jump into everything, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate everything that they do for us. We couldn't do the show without their support. Of course, we wouldn't have a show if we didn't have you listeners. So thank you all for listening to us as well. With that said, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
That's right. We have brought back the stars from episode 128, which came out about a year ago, would you say?
Yeah, just a little over a year ago.
Yeah, a little over a year ago. Anyway, we've got them back from Kentucky Senator Bourbon, co-founders Damon Thayer and Andre Regard. Gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast.
Always great to be back here in the Bourbon Life Studios, where we're surrounded by an unbelievable bourbon collection everywhere I look. There,
bourbon.
there is bourbon.
Yeah.
And we're glad to be on drinking our bourbon, Kentucky Senator Bourbon, with you tonight.
Well, we're happy to have you back. Welcome back, Andre.
Thanks for having me. This is a great home office. I think I would. It's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world all the time, I think.
Yeah, I'm working from home for me. Sometimes I gotta remember I gotta wait.
Yeah, lock yourself in the other room.
I know.
What is this waiting that you refer to?
Yeah,
I do not know of what you speak.
Yeah.
Put the blinders on when you walk through the office. Don't look at the bourbon.
There's no bourbon. There's no bourbon here. Well, last time you guys were here, kind of the same setup, but I think the piano was here before, and it's been moved out. And I talked about putting a wall up to put shelves and everything. And
you're not putting that wall
I still
up.
haven't done it.
You're not putting it up.
The piano's gone, or somewhere else?
No, it's gone. It belonged to the original owners of the home. So we just kind of kept it for them. And then it became a prop for all my bourbon. And it was loaded down the entire top. There was probably 100 more bottles that I'd put on that poor piano. So
now there's just a cat scratching post.
There's a
in
cat.
the corner.
That's right. I don't know if people can. Oh yeah, they can see that.
It leaves a lot of room for bourbon
over my
here.
shoulder.
Yeah.
They can see it. Yeah,
a lot of room for bourbon growth.
That's right. So I got a lot of room down here in the man cave. Anita just has given up. She's like, you can vacuum. So I vacuumed today just for you guys because she was like, nope, not even going to go down there.
We feel honored. I feel honored.
Well, I'm happy to have you guys back with us. I've seen you guys a couple times each since the last time we've been on. You and I actually did some radio together, which was a lot of fun.
And now you're a regular.
Yeah, it's fun. I need to get back down there sometime. That'd be a good time. But yeah, I've done some stuff with Jack, and then when you filled in as well, right?
Yeah, they occasionally ask me to guest host on Talk Radio 590 WVLK.
There you go.
And I've subbed for Cruiser and Larry Glover, and I've had you on to talk bourbon, and we'll do so again if they ask me back.
If they ask you back.
Sometimes I'm too mean to the other side of the political spectrum, and they put me on probation for a while.
Oh man, and Andre, I've seen you several times as well. I mean, we run into each other. We see each other at the Bourbon Classic, and then we'll talk about the pick I saw both of you guys at that.
You're both lawyers who drink bourbon, so of course you run into each other all the time.
Well, the Bourbon Classic was a lot of fun.
It was, yeah.
It was
I'm
a nice
excited.
event. And of course, you came over for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah,
well.
yeah, your party at the breeder. Yeah, that was a great classic picture of me with that. The bottle was already empty, but it looks like I'm polishing off your 15-year-old.
No, I think you finished it. You know your party's not going great when you walk out at the end and everybody's drinking the 15-year-old bourbon.
When they were mixing it, dude, I could not believe that people were mixing your 15. Your
do not speak of this. I did not know about it.
I know. I'm telling you. I was like, and it was almost already gone. I was like, no, you're not mixing the 15-year-old Kentucky Senator Bourbon with Sprite or Coke. So I tried to rescue it, but it was too late.
We've added that to the list of 8 deadly sins.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Thou shalt not use bourbon aged longer than 7 years in a cocktail.
I would agree with that. And that was a fun story. If you haven't listened to the episode that we did with Andre and Damon before, go back and check that out. Episode 128. That was a lot of fun. The story behind the tote. I was listening to that the other day. Great story. Go back and listen to that. But that was your first release, the 15-year-old. What we're going to do tonight, you had a new release that just came out. And we'll get to that in the third round, but we're going to go sequentially. So we're going to go, the second release you did was actually a 6-year-old, and that's what we're going to open up with tonight. So if one of you want to talk a little bit about that 6-year-old, what it is, and so our listeners know, it's...
Well, I think we should start out by letting everybody know that we're a non-distiller producer for now.
Good point. Yep, there you go.
And we buy our bourbon from brokers, and we bottle it, sometimes immediately, or sometimes we age it longer. So these 3 releases tonight are from a batch of 25 barrels that we bought from a broker, and we are very transparent, and we'll tell you that it's Barton juice.
Yeah.
The broker wouldn't tell us, but when the barrels actually show up and it says Barton Distillery on the barrel, that's definitely a good clue of where it came from.
Yeah.
The bourbon, once we bought the 25 barrels, was moved to Bardstown Bourbon Company, where it's aged. And so the releases we're going to taste tonight, the 6, 7, and 8 year Kentucky Senator Bourbon releases, are all from the same mash bill.
Right.
And it's Barton juice. We just age it a little longer.
Gotcha. And
so
I think
that's the first of those releases was the 6 year that came out in the summer of 2021.
Yeah, and that release is the William J. DeBoe, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So as we mentioned in the last show, each of our releases is named after a different U.S. senator from the state of Kentucky. And so the 6-year release was named after a senator that only served 1 term, which of course is 6 years. And that's how part of that way we came up with the name of that release.
I gotcha. And it's 107, all your releases. Well, I guess, was the first one the 15-year-old?
Yes.
Did you guys do that 107 as well? Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, 107 is a consistent theme that we're sticking with.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but one of the beautiful things that we love about our brand is all of our releases are different. We're not necessarily looking for every release to be the same.
Right.
They're all going to be unique. In this instance, we've kind of created a vertical of aging, where people who are buying the 6, 7, and 8 will be able to have an opportunity on a small quantity basis to see how that changes.
Right.
And then, a little bit later on, we're going to have different mash bills and various distilleries that we're going to do contract distillation with.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I know you guys are friends or know the Pinhook guys, and they do that. They've done a vertical series with their MGP barrels.
It's actually where I got the idea.
Okay. I didn't know that for sure.
Yeah, it's actually where I got the idea. I was thinking about getting into the Bourbon Lane horse racing partnership that the Pinhook guys run. And I met with Jamie Hill to talk about it. And we ended up talking more about bourbon than horses. And I was really intrigued by their strategy of naming each of their releases after one of their racehorses, like Bourbon and Rye, and they've got several others. Most of them have bourbon in their name. And I had just sort of stumbled onto this lapsed Kentucky Senator Bourbon brand, which was a shelf brand that sort of petered out in the 70s from what we can tell. It started out in the early part of the 20th century with Krigler and Krigler Distillery in Covington, and then apparently was sold to Double Springs Distillers in Bardstown, and then sort of petered out. And I went to Andre and he's one of my closest friends and my business lawyer for my other businesses. Well, everybody has to have one, and even me. And I told him about the idea, and I wanted him to do the legal work for me, which is substantial in the bourbon business. Lots of rules, lots of regs, lots of licenses. And he said, okay, I really like your idea. Let's go 50-50. You, meaning me, do the marketing and branding, and because that's my background. He said, I'll do the legal work and we'll figure everything else out. And it's been a great partnership because that's exactly how we've run the company.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the 6-year-old that we're drinking, the William J. DeBoe. And again, this is 107 proof, 6 years old. The mash bill on this is 75-21-4, just in case people at home are curious what that is. So it's a little bit of a higher rye content. Matt, what do you pick up on this one, man?
Got a nice sweetness on the nose. I think the sweetness comes across as like a honey corn cereal, corn puffs, or like frosted flake type aroma. Then there's like a vanilla taffy kind of flavor smell that I'm picking up through there. I think the vanilla comes through on the oak, but there's like this sweetness, almost kind of salty, briny taffy aroma in there as well. Really, really nice. The rye comes through, a little bit of mint, a little bit of those like subtle baking spices, but more of the herb side of the rye coming through on this. Just really great nose.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice different flavors coming in. Like you said, that vanilla, Matt, comes through. Like you said, briny. That's kind of interesting because I do kind of detect a little bit what does come across to me. I understand what you're saying when you say that. Which is kind of unique, right? So very, very interesting. But 6 years old, a lot of nice flavors coming in off of this. And again, this is Barton's distillate. So
it is.
We're familiar. People are familiar with that.
It has good legs.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I was just gonna mention and comment. I don't know if our listeners can see, but
I'm super excited about tonight because I haven't sat down in one tasting and tasted all three of them.
You haven't?
Okay. In a row.
Oh,
so well, this is really going to be cool.
See, I'm glad I masterminded this whole thing.
So real quick, because you mentioned earlier that you did come to our last single barrel pick. So just so the listeners kind of understand, what we do is for the last 3 releases, we've drawn out 6 barrels. And then we open all 6 barrels and bring over a group of people. And Brad Williams from Liquor Barn comes over. And we go through those 6 barrels. And Brad, with a very limited amount of input from everybody else, we'll pick one of those barrels as a single barrel release. So even though we have a 6, 7, and 8-year-old release small batch that we're tasting, there was also a single barrel release. And that was a really interesting process to go through there and see how that selection was made.
Yeah. And it was fun. We can talk about that more when we get to that 8-year-old that we'll be drinking here in the 3rd round. And I'll talk about my experience of joining you guys for that, which was definitely a lot of fun. So thoughts though, guys, in terms of the nose, have you guys visited with this in a while? I'm just curious because it is your product, but I know it's maybe not something you sit down and be like, oh, every day I'm going to be drinking my own.
When people say, how can nobody have the first Macintosh?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have any more 6-year-old bourbon, so I haven't had it in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's been 2 years. How can you expect us to still have any left?
Okay. Yeah.
We do have some posterity bottles.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. But I haven't drank this in a while, and it's good juice. It won a gold award from Fred Minnick's Ask It Awards. It won a gold award for taste. We got a lot of great reviews on it, and people really like it. It's the youngest bourbon that we've put out, and the first of those Barton barrels. And as we said before, everything we put out is at 107 proof.
Right.
That's a traditional barrel proof that Weller Antique uses. A couple of the Pappy's, Pappy 10, Pappy 15, as well as the Baker 7-year. And the mash bill on all 3 of these, because they're the same batch, just aged differently, is, as you said, 75, 21, and 4.
Yeah.
So it's a very, like you said, a very high rye bourbon. And this is pretty spicy.
Yeah.
I've thought this would be the only one that I would think you could use in a cocktail.
Right.
I as a rule, if it's aged 7 years or more, I'm not going to put it in a cocktail. I don't even like to put it over ice, but I will if someone asks for it.
Especially if it's 15 years, we don't put it in a cocktail.
Correct. Especially Sprite or Coke.
Oh, man. Oh, goodness. Well,
that is the downside of letting somebody else bartend at your house. They just grab what's convenient.
They grab whatever, right?
See, I'm more of a control freak than Andre is.
Yeah.
I never let anybody else bartend at my house.
Yeah.
If someone reaches into the refrigerator to grab a beer, I get a little anxious.
It's like, what are you getting in there? You don't get that one. No.
Let me choose.
That's right.
For you.
So guys, let's talk a little bit. We did this in the first show that we did together, but I still think it'd be fun just to kind of go back, take a few minutes, introduce yourselves. Since we've already started and done over 3/4 of the first round.
Sure.
Just kind of tell everybody a little bit of who you are and your background.
Sure. So this is Andre, obviously. I'm originally from Louisiana, grew up in South Louisiana. When I graduated high school, went to D.C. to Georgetown University and was in the Navy. So I was in Navy ROTC, and then after I graduated, was commissioned in the Navy and spent 5 years in the Navy working with nukes. And as a kid, Louisiana has a real drinking culture. We certainly drank, but bourbon was never something that was highlighted as a drink. I mean, Old Charter, we had a lot of Old Charter and a lot of Old Fashions made out of Jim Beam White Label, Christmas special, right? So after living in D.C. for 10 years, I moved to Kentucky, and I was in the horse business for about 10 years.
Okay.
Ran a thoroughbred breeding operation, and of course started drinking bourbon.
Yeah.
And then a little side note, that's when I started actually doing some family history. And it turned out that my great-great-grandfather went to high school in Bardstown.
Okay.
There was a train that went from New Orleans to Louisville and it went right through central Louisiana, would pick up all these young French men, boys, and they would go to the Jesuit high school in Bardstown.
Oh, okay.
Which is St. Joe's.
Okay.
And actually where when they have the Bourbon Festival, that building, the Getz building, I believe it's called. That used to be the dormitory for St. Joe's.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
And so started doing that history, and he married a woman named Anna Ferriol, and his father's name happened to be Ferriol, spelled differently, kind of unusual names.
Yeah.
And her father was the founder of Old Granddad Whiskey.
Oh,
so
wow.
her great-great-grandfather was Basil Hayden.
That's really cool.
So that kind of was a fun thing to play with, and I kind of had that on my wall in my office, this history of the family. So kind of come across the bourbon industry naturally. By pedigree.
It's in your blood.
It's in our blood.
It's
in our blood. But one of the things Damon and I talked about when we were going to launch this brand or relaunch the label is, that's really not, it's mentioned as part of the story, but I'm not going to come out here and say that I found my 7 great-grandfather recipe in the bottom of some Bible that was in the back room, and lucky me. And we're gonna buy the best bourbon that we can find that's available, and we tasted quite a bit. And we'll talk a little bit later. We're also excited that we're moving into contract distillation.
Yeah, very cool. What about you, sir, Damon?
So I, like Andre, am not a native of Kentucky. I like to tell people that I wasn't born in Kentucky, but I came as soon as I could. I was born and raised in northern Michigan.
Right.
Like the old Johnny Cash song says, I was born in Saginaw, Michigan, but I am not the son of a Saginaw fisherman. For you youngsters out there, just Google the song and
there
listen
you go.
to it. It's a great song, and it's actually was recorded by several people other than Johnny Cash. I went to Michigan State, go green. We're a basketball school now. After last season's football debacle. But I'm a horse racing lover. I fell in love with horse racing as a kid growing up in northern Michigan. I quit the Cub Scouts to join the 4-H horse club with my sister and read the Black Stallion series and fell in love with horse racing. And I worked at racetracks in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, Washington, the 2 Maryland Jockey Club tracks out there before I moved to Kentucky almost 31 years ago to work at Turfway Park in northern Kentucky. I'm a PR and marketing and track management guy by trade, and got involved in politics here. And I rose up to become vice chairman of the Republican Party of Kentucky, and then was elected to the state Senate in 2003 and selected by my peers to be Senate Majority Floor Leader in 2012. I live in Georgetown. And, my 3 loves are bourbon, horses, and politics. So I feel like I'm living in the right place.
Yeah, right at home.
I do racehorse partnerships
Yeah.
And the partnerships I'm in have won 6 races in the last 30 days, including one earlier today at Ellis Park. So
congratulations.
We're on a nice little roll after a kind of a dry spell for the last year. And I still do marketing and consulting in the horse racing space. And along with Andre, co-founded Kentucky Senator Bourbon.
Very nice. You know, one thing I will say, though, I was disappointed. I was in the Senate chambers for an attorney function that I was there for, the Kentucky Land Title Association, and actually had my picture taken at your desk while you all were not in session. And I was disappointed because there was no bourbon stashed anywhere in your desk. I was really hoping that I could like open a magic drawer somewhere and find a stash of bourbon. But
you know, it would probably make session go much better if I did.
Oh, man.
You know, disclaimer, I have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors and can't just
there you go.
provide free bourbon for all the members of the Kentucky State Senate.
That's a good point. Speaking of the bourbon, let's jump back over to that. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this 6-year-old?
It's got a nice sweet cornbread taste to it, like that good, not overly sweet, but like good southern low sugar content cornbread.
Yep.
That I really pick up right there. Then there's a honeysuckle, some floral notes, honeysuckle, a little bit of like springtime flowers with it as well. Nice oak, nice vanilla, and then rye comes through again with some of those herbal flavors like the mint, a little bit of spearmint, maybe some thyme or lemongrass, and like touch of citrus kind of coming down, but nice, good, oily, long finish. Just really, really beautiful product. Of 6 years, I think, in a 107 proof, certainly does not drink 107. Quite approachable at the proof point, and very mature for 6 years.
Yeah, I was going to say at 107 proof, this one's very easy to drink. So it's very enjoyable. I get on the finish, almost like a cinnamon type of kick from the rye. You're talking about the herbalness, which that does come through, but I also get like more of a cinnamon. But it's funny because you're talking about the cornbread, and it almost gave me a hint of like a jalapeno type of cornbread, like a sweet cornbread, but with a little kick of jalapeno in it, with a little bit of heat. So kind of crossed my mind. So what do you guys, Andre, Damon, you guys got anything?
You guys have such good tasting notes. I agree with everything. On the cornbread side, I agree with Matt. It's not Jif cornbread.
Right.
It's definitely a little bit of that drier cornbread. But I just think it overall has a nice feel in the mouth. It's well balanced.
Yep.
I think it's a real easy bourbon to drink. I brought a bottle of it. I went on a float trip in the Grand Canyon for 10 days and brought a bottle of that one and a bottle of the 15-year-old bourbon. And a lot of people really like the 6-year-old bourbon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, 6-year-old, you got a lot of great flavors, so we've already talked about. So, yeah, no doubt about that. What about you, Damon?
I've found it probably to be the more fruit-forward of our releases.
Okay.
It even has more of a cherry color than the older releases, which spent an additional year or two in the barrels.
Oh, here, I should show, while you're talking, I should show everybody the bottles.
There you go.
Now that we do video, right?
Yeah.
So everybody can see the bottles and the senator.
We made it red because DeBoe was a Republican. We have alternated Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican.
Oh, okay. All right.
Don't know how long we'll be able to do that because really up until the late 60s, there weren't many Republicans from the U.S. Senate in Kentucky.
In Kentucky, yeah. No.
Now we haven't elected a Democrat since 1992. That was the last year Wendell Ford was elected. And we will someday have a bourbon named after him. We're ecumenical. We named our first bourbon after Alvin Barkley, who was for prohibition and he was against gambling and he was a Democrat. I think that shows you how cheeky I can be as a right-wing Republican who loves horse racing and bourbon.
Yeah. So Mark, you showed the bottle a second ago. So on our bottle, the style of the bottle itself, and the style of the label will stay consistent.
Okay.
But we're looking to change the color pattern each time. I mean, we're going to have to repeat eventually. And then on the back is a nice kind of like a pencil drawing of the senator that it's named after, with a little bit of history and of course a QR code to go to the website. So, when we did the first release, everybody thought that was cool. We did the second, they were like, there's something different. Then when we had 3 of them lined up, people started realizing, well, this is neat,
the vertical kind of starts to come together a little better.
It's a picture.
Yep.
We tell people buy 2, one to keep, one to drink, and it's It's a great collection. It's great bourbon to drink, but it's a really cool collection. Like Andre said, we've got the short bio of each senator on the back label, and then a QR code that'll take you to our website for a more detailed bio. Because we like to say Kentucky Senator Bourbon, serving up great Kentucky bourbon with a side of Kentucky history.
Very nice.
And we think that's going to give us staying power in the marketplace. There are a lot of great new brands coming out with great bourbon, and there's plenty of room for all of us. And there have been a lot of really good new brands coming on. But
sure.
I think we've got a pretty unique story, and at least for now, we're super premium, top shelf, above $100 a bottle,
right?
And can be hard to find. Although we're easier to find than some other bottles of $100 plus bourbon. Not going to name names, but we try to be available and make sure that our distributor Kentucky Eagle gets it out around Kentucky as best they can.
Well, guys, let's take a quick break because we're at the end of round one, and we'll come back and talk more about the brand. I want to talk some more about the bottles as well and the design and everything. But final thoughts real quick, Matt, on the 6-year-old. What do you think?
I love it. Love to see where the vertical is going to go.
Yeah, I'm excited for the 7-year-old we're going to pour up next. So everybody sit tight. We'll be back with more with Damon Thayer and Andre Regard, the co-founders of Kentucky Senator Bourbon, in just a minute. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second term of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark.
You see what you did there.
Yeah. I stole that from Matt from last year's episode. So,
oh, really? Did I say that?
Yeah, you did. You
okay.
came out like spur of the moment, just threw that out there. And I was like, damn, that was good. So,
well, you're welcome.
Tuck that little nugget away, man. So welcome back.
You've been waiting a year for that one.
I have been waiting a long time to throw that one back in there. Yeah, the second term of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, of course, here live in the Bourbon Life Studios. This is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there, man?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great, man. We are full on having a good time tonight.
We definitely
You doing all right?
Yeah, I am. Oh, well, you know what, Matt? We talk about this all the time. Like, you go through your day. You just,
I know. I came over here
and you're like,
you were dragging your feet. It looked like your favorite whale just sank. You're kind of low a little bit. But now we get down here, the studios. We have great company, great guests, great drinks, of course.
Yep. Yeah, it's not just the booze talking, you know. But we do have great guests with us. But before we jump into that, let me tell our sponsors, thank you for all you do for us. We couldn't do the show without their support, of course. And you, our listeners, we appreciate all of you for tuning in. I won't ruin Matt's line. I'll let him take that next round. So, but with that said, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
That's right. Joining us morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you get your Bourbon Life podcast, we have Damon Thayer and Andre Regard, the co-founders of Kentucky Senator Bourbon. Gentlemen, welcome back for the second part of the podcast here.
Looking forward to it.
We look forward to being sworn in for this term.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, this will be a 20-minute term, a 25-minute term, shortest term you've ever served. Right.
I served an 18-month term once, so.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a little quicker, I think, but probably more fun.
Probably.
I'm going to throw that.
Not probably. Definitely.
Oh, guys, well, we're having a great time. You know, we were talking about the bottles before the break. I just want to kind of jump back to that because the bottles, you know, it's funny because I was looking through, and I told you guys I was looking today because I could have sworn I had what we're drinking, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I could have sworn I had the Liquor Barn pick of that bottle. Amazingly, I couldn't find it. You talked about the bottles everywhere. It's like, I mean, I spent 30 minutes today looking for this bottle and I couldn't find it. But I did notice that the bottle design on these is similar to me, like the Weller, like the Full Proofs, the Antique 107. It's got that rounded, like the shoulders that round off, But then the top of the glass, it's also rounded as well. It's not just a straight neck. So it kind of has that kind of appeal to it. It's a I don't want to say sexy, but it's a shapely bottle. I mean, it's got a nice look to it, and the labels, everything. It's just really cool. I mean, I really appreciate the way you guys have put all it together, man.
It was intentional.
Yeah,
we chose it intentionally to look like a classic, hard to find, super premium, top shelf bourbon.
Okay,
and if it looks like a Weller bottle, I guess that's a coincidence, but I mean, this bottle is available to any bourbon or liquor provider through our glass company in Frankfurt, Liquor Bottle Incorporated.
Yeah,
anybody can buy it, but we went through dozens of bottles, and we kind of knew what we wanted, and we wanted something that exuded class, high end, and super premium, and that's where we ended up.
Well.
One of the things that I don't think Damon and I appreciated when we started this adventure is just how many moving parts go into a bottle. And the choices. I mean, there's so many choices, from the type of stopper you're going to have to how you're going to put the label on, 2-part label, 1-part label, the tax stamp on the top, all the different choices of bottles. I mean, it really was a bit overwhelming at first when the guy tossed over the 30-page book.
Oh, man.
It's have fun. And then, you're talking to your bottler, and the bottler who's going to do your bottling, they're looking at how to be efficient. This is not the easiest bottle to label because it tapers. Mm-hmm. So it requires hand labeling.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got a 2-part label on the front that has to be appropriately placed by hand, and then a label on the back, and then a seal on the top. And so, you've got to buy your bottles, you got to buy your corks, you got to design your seal and your 2-part front label and your 1-part back label. And fortunately, we found the vendors for all of these, and we've got a great relationship with Turner Labels down in Nicholasville. They do a great job for us, and a lot of other brands that people are familiar with. And we've got to buy some more bottles, but we've got a great vendor for that, and we buy the caps and the seals from them.
One of the things I liked when Damon did the design, is it's very classic. The bottle is very classic, but the label is almost Art Deco. It kind of jumps out off the shelf. It's so many people want to make every bottle of bourbon look like it's something that has been sitting in the back, getting dusty forever, frontier idea, this is America, American bourbon and whiskey. But we wanted to really go for that nice, clean look. And I think the bottle really does come across that way.
And to be fair and fully transparent, I, as a marketing guy, I oversaw the development of the label. The actual logo was developed by a young gentleman named Alex Keys, who works for Grit Creative, an ad agency firm I've used in Frankfurt. And the actual label was designed by a young lady named Paige Tiller, who is a production artist, graphic designer at Turner Labels in Nicholasville.
Gotcha.
And Andre gives me 2 credit because I couldn't design, I can't paint, I can't draw, I can barely write my own name in a legible format. But I oversaw the development of it with some really fine, talented people.
Yeah, well, it's a very nice bottle, for sure. There's no question about it. The labels, everything, the shape of the bottle, everything is very nice. So let's talk about what we're going to be drinking this round, since we've talked about the bottles. Sorry about that. But Damon, Andre, whichever you guys want to talk about.
So we had the 6-year-old in round 1. So now we're on the 7-year-old, which was aged. It's the same mash bill. And we've aged it 1 additional year.
Okay.
Exactly. So we're doing each of our, from this batch of bourbon that we purchased, it all turns a year old basically on June 1.
Okay.
So we have bottled, we did our first release, and then we were fortunate enough to be able to acquire this bourbon. So we did our second release 4 months later in June of 21. First release was in March of 21. So now we're kind of lined up to do June releases for the next 2 years. So once the bourbon turns another year, we get all ready to go and do our bottling. So it's the same mash bill. It's another year. I know Damon wanted to talk about when we pulled these barrels out, a little bit about the leaky barrel.
Yeah, this, when you age bourbon, you lose it naturally to the angel share, the evaporation and some absorption, and you try to plan for that, 5, maybe 10% a year, depending on the weather. But in this particular batch, we lost more bourbon than we had hoped because it had a leaky barrel. So we lost some volume. So actually, the 8-year bourbon that we're going to do in the next segment, we got more volume, more bottles from it because even though technically there was less of it because of the extra year of aging and evaporation, but there was more of it because the barrels didn't leak.
Gotcha.
So there's actually fewer bottles of the 7-year, which is named after John G. Carlisle of Covington, Kentucky. And I'll let Andre, since it was his idea, talk about why last year's release was named for Senator Carlisle.
So Senator Carlisle, after being in the Senate, became the Secretary of Treasury.
Okay.
And as the Secretary of Treasury, he came up with the Bottle and Bond Act. So the Bottle and Bond Act arguably is the oldest consumer protection act in America, and it established what bourbon is as we know it, what bottle and bond bourbon is, but has become bourbon, right? 51% corn, aged in a new white oak barrel, made in one season, and then aged for the appropriate amount of time. So it was the 125th anniversary of Senator Carlisle. So we thought it would be appropriate to recognize him as the father of bourbon on the 125th anniversary of the Bottle and Bond Act. So that's how we picked it. But because our first release was during 21, our first 2 releases, we really didn't get to do any sort of public involvement. We didn't have any public tastings. We just,
no launch party.
No launch. We just released this bourbon into the market during COVID, basically, with nobody knowing anything. So when we did the John Carlisle, we got a phone call from Northern Kentucky, from the guys in Covington, and they said, "Hey, we would like for you guys to come to Covington, and we want to have a launch party for you, a tasting party."
Nice,
cool.
So we went up to Smoke Justice.
We worked with the Northern Kentucky Convention and Visitors Bureau and with the Kenton County Fiscal Court and the mayor of Covington. They were very excited. Not only is Senator Carlisle from Covington, has a school named for him up there, Carlisle Elementary, but also Krigler and Krigler, the original purveyors of Kentucky Senator Bourbon, were based in Covington, Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
So we discovered with our third release, just sort of stumbled onto it, this regional excitement based on the senator we choose to generate extra buzz in a particular marketplace. So we had a great launch party up at Smoke Justice, which, by the way, is one of the best bourbon bars in Northern Kentucky, maybe one of the best in Kentucky.
I've not been there.
Highly recommended. It's right in the shadow of the Roebling Suspension Bridge right there in Covington.
Okay.
And it's really cool. They've got some great barbecue and smoked meats, but an amazing sort of back of the restaurant bourbon bar that's pretty spectacular. And Smoke Justice, spelled Justis. It was really cool. The mayor declared it Kentucky Senator Bourbon Day in Covington.
Nice.
And
Very cool.
So we learned something new with that release once the stupid lockdowns were lifted and we could actually get back to normal.
And they did it in connection with they kind of have a bourbon society that's associated with the restaurant. So while it was certainly promoted by them, they also had a group of regulars there. So we got to get some good feedback.
Oh, that's great. You got to get it in front of a bunch of people that weren't just stopping by at a restaurant or something.
And we had some great visitors. The owner of New Riff came by.
Yeah, Ken Lewis.
Oh yeah,
which was nice to have some other folks there in the industry. It was just an overall great experience, and it made Damon and I start thinking about, well, what is it that we want to do with this brand?
Yeah,
to distinguish it and make it differently. And it's had some effects on our business model. We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk about that in the third round. But speaking of the bourbon, Matt, let's jump over to that and talk about what are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one?
Yeah, it's funny what a difference this 1 year makes. First, the color on this is really, really nice auburn, dark, like almost cherry type color. And I get a lot of stone fruit from this, a lot of red wine, a lot of plum, apricot. I think some of like the rye and the citrus I was picking up on this 6 year comes across a little bit darker, a little deeper, like apricot or like kind of tangerine type flavor. Not as sweet, not as much honey on the nose. I think maybe a little bit of the barrel is subduing that. There's a little bit more oak but like less of that sweet vanilla. Just like really, really savory. It's just got a really great savory, bold nose to it.
It's funny, Matt, because I actually ate a fresh, ripe, cold plum today for the first time in years. I couldn't tell you the last time I had a plum. And as soon as you started saying it, I was like, oh my gosh, dude, it's exactly what I had this afternoon. I mean, that plum note, that stone fruit you talked about comes through, but I agree on the oak as well, that there is more of the oakiness that comes through. It's not overpowering by any means. It's just different, obviously, and that's really cool to line it up. 1 year difference, aged at the same place, Bardstown Bourbon, right? The barrels are
Correct.
Bardstown, right? So you get the same mash bill, you get the same proof, same distillery, barrels aging in the same location, and just a 1 year difference, which is
almost to the day. I mean, pretty close. We've kept the bottling pretty consistent when we do it.
Very cool. So what about you guys? Anything else in terms of the nose that you pick up on this one? That
I get a lot more spicy. I just find this one overall to be a more spice forward type of bourbon.
Gotcha. Damon, what about you?
Well, as Matt said, it's darker. You can see it when you look at the bottles. This is a little more cherry red. The 6 year, the 7 year is a more deeper, as you said, auburn red, and it's still got good legs. But you definitely start to get more of an oak forward feel. On the bourbon as it's been an extra year in the bottle. And we've received really good reviews on all of our bourbon from Fred Minnick, a noted bourbon influencer, and this got a gold award from his Ascot Society. But he did say when he did a review of this, he thought it was really good bourbon, but the 6 year. But he said, I really can't wait till this ages another year or two. And I think he's right. I mean, it's just they've got great warehouses there along Bluegrass Parkway, Bardstown Bourbon Company, and it's a great place to age bourbon. And I think the combination has worked really well for our brand.
Yeah, I mean, and who doesn't love a beautiful redhead with nice legs, right?
I'm married to one of those.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Damon was waiting for me to say
that.
You teed him right up for that. Right up for that.
Glad I could do that for you. So, I was going to ask you a few minutes ago the color, because we talked about the color, the red for the first one. I know there's a story with the last one, the middle one, like dark green. Is that right? Is there a color? Was that just the color that you chose?
There's absolutely no significance. We were just looking for a different color to make the vertical stand out.
Okay.
All
right.
Yeah, I don't.
Sometimes we'll have a story on the 8 year. We had a story on the 6 year. Green just
no story.
It just worked out to be a different color.
There you go.
Well, he was the Secretary of Treasury.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, that'll
New story.
New story.
Yeah.
Just
Rewrite history
you heard
here.
it here live first on the Bourbon Life Podcast.
I'm a lawyer. I have to fill up that space.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm a politician. I change narratives all the time.
I was going to say that's right. You have it's your prerogative to do that. Correct. So you get so this was this was 5 barrels as well, right? So you had 6, one barrel pick, right?
Correct.
Okay.
6 barrels total, 1 single barrel for Liquor Barn.
I got you.
And 5 in our small batch. And by the way, we are so fortunate that Brad Williams and the team at Liquor Barn do a single barrel pick for our little old bourbon brand. I mean, it gives us credibility and it gives us great reach across the Commonwealth. They've got 23 stores now, with the expansion into northern Kentucky. So
what was also fun when we did the second pick is, in addition to Brad being there, Jonathan Blue came, but also he brought 2 young men with him who were from the Ukraine, and they owned. One of them owned, another one worked at the largest distillery in the Ukraine.
I remember this story from last year.
And that was kind of neat, them telling us their story, of course, with the war going on, and the importance of their distillery to the economy there, that it became kind of a protected site. And they were in Kentucky because they were looking to expand into bourbon. And they spent half a day with us. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So how did you get this partnership with Brad? I mean, Brad's a great guy. Love Brad. Of course, Liquor Barn's our sponsor of our podcast. We love those guys, no doubt about it. But I'm just curious, how'd you connect with Brad, and how did all that relationship really get going?
Jonathan Blue is a friend of mine. He's, of course, the chairman of Liquor Barn. And, of course, he recently sold to GoPuff.
Right.
But he's still the chairman. But he owned Liquor Barn and is responsible for its expansion into 23 stores around Kentucky. And, when Andre and I were spending a couple of years putting this whole project together, we met with Jonathan, and he said, "Look, if your bourbon tastes good, we'll carry it."
Nice.
And when we went to Kentucky Eagle to meet with them about being our distributor, and we were able to say, "Hey, we've got a store that if our bourbon tastes good, you call them up, they're going to buy a good number of the bottles." They helped us launch. I mean, there are a couple of key figures, and Jonathan Blue and Liquor Barn are part of that. Kentucky Eagle and the team over there, a big part of it. Bluegrass Distillers, where we bottle,
right,
a big part of it. So, but that's how we got that connection. And the bourbon sells out all the time. So, although I think they stage it, they keep some back, because I saw some of our second and third release as recently as this winter. 9 months after one of the releases came out. So I think they keep some back and fill it in,
Gotcha.
so they don't run out, because we only come out once a year.
Yeah.
So
It's been amazing how helpful people have been for us to launch. And once again, all the moving parts, whether it's finding the people to help you do the labels, the bottles. I mean, there are other producers who introduced us to the bottling people, who introduced us to who to get the labels from, everybody, while it's a competitive business, it's certainly one that everybody wants to see grow. I think there's a lot of growth left for the bourbon industry in Kentucky, consumption throughout the country, internationally, the emails we get on a regular basis about wanting to carry it, not only in other states, but also in other countries. And, everybody wants to, be the best, but I have found everybody to be very helpful, and we've had a lot of people who have helped us achieve the success we've achieved.
Yeah.
We're very grateful for that.
And here's the thing that I think is really amazing is you guys both, this is not your full-time job. I mean, this isn't what you all do. You guys, Andre, I know as an attorney, we've talked about this. I mean, I work from home. My job's different than your job. You don't work from home. I mean, you are involved in some pretty, not high profile, but pretty big cases and things that you've got going on. I mean, you are very, very involved with that. Damon, you're the same way. I mean, you've got so many things going on. How do you guys find the time? I mean, how do you make the time to commit to this? I'm just kind of curious for my own.
I think we're both talented multitaskers.
Gotcha.
And, I know that I have a short attention span, and I'm able to juggle a lot of things. That's probably one of the things that suits my job as being majority leader. You have to handle a lot of things at once. And so, we just do it. You just make time for it.
Yeah.
And, soon we are going to move the headquarters of Kentucky Senator Bourbon from my dining room table to a spare cubicle at Andre's law office on Leestown Road.
Awesome.
As we plan to scale up this brand. But it really kind of started out as a hobby.
Right.
And then it took off, and we won all these awards, and Fred Minnick wrote about us in Forbes Online, and people like you started talking about us and promoting us, and we're like, we really got something here.
Yeah.
And so, to use a phrase from another life, another pursuit of my life, we're off to the races. we just make the time. I mean, when we're in legislative session and I'm doing 12-hour days in Frankfurt, I do work from my home office on this project and other projects that I have in my other businesses. I do them early in the morning or late at night before I go to Frankfurt or when I get home.
Yeah.
When we're sourcing bourbon, it cannot have a birthday between January and May, because Damon's in session. So that would be a problem.
It'd be tough for us to bottle during legislative session, because that's
year,
pretty all-consuming for me during that time of the year.
This year is only 30 days. I mean, come on, man.
Look at you, your knowledge of the legislative sessions in the Kentucky Constitution.
Man, short session.
That's really impressive, Mark. You've been waiting to drop that in on me.
Well, Mark, to go back to that, one of the ways, not only Damon and I, we do work well together. We've had a lot of support from the people around us, whether the guys at Bluegrass Distillery, who does our bottling for us.
Yeah.
Their entire staff, particularly Maggie, have been incredibly helpful to take care of a lot of the little side issues. And
Maggie Young at Bluegrass Distillers is a rock star.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's a big team effort, but if we're going to go to the next level, we're going to have to both put a lot more commitment into it.
Gotcha. You're going to have to hire a brand ambassador.
Exactly.
These are all things we're talking about.
There you go, man.
Because Andre does all the legal work. I do all the marketing. I'm doing Instagram posts, Twitter, Facebook. I'm trolling to see if people are talking about us, so I can share it on our feeds.
Oh yeah, I know how that goes.
So you know how that goes. It's very time consuming, but if, we'd like to grow and eventually hire people to do some of these tasks.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Someone younger than me who's better at Instagram than I am.
Oh man. So Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey because we're close to the end of round 2 here, or term 2.
That's right.
Let's talk about this. What do you get in terms of the palate and the finish on the 7-year-old?
Again, this has got like that dark raisin right on the front of the palate I pick up. And then Andre, you said that for you this was spicier. I think this on the palate it definitely brings some more of the spice. I think the rye really shines through with that bold spice, nice peppercorn, good clove, like more of the baking spices, a little less of the herbs come through on this one for me. The oak is definitely there too. There's like a little bit of the oak vanilla influence and a nice long spicy finish. I think the finish on this one really starts to hit those older ages, those longer, spicier notes as well.
What's funny to me, Matt, is that even though these are the same proof, because of the spiciness on this one, it drinks. In my mind, I think it's hotter. I think it's higher proof just because the way it hits my palate and the spicier notes that come through over that 6-year-old. But obviously, they're both at 107, which is really kind of unique.
One of the things following that comment is, everybody wants to drink a higher proof bourbon. But what I like about this is it still has that burn, it has that long flavor at the end, but it doesn't have too much of an alcohol flavor.
Sure. Yeah.
The alcohol doesn't drown out the little nuances that come out in it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
And the reason we decided to stick with 107, well, first of all, the first tote we bought was at 107. So we're like, this sounds good. Let's go with that. Everything since then we proofed down to 107 is because that's the level of consistency, because the aging statements on our bourbon are going to change.
Yeah.
The mash bills on our bourbons over the years are going to change. So that's what the plan is, always 107 proof.
Gotcha.
That's the consistency you can expect from Kentucky Senator Bourbon. Otherwise, what you're going to expect is a changing mash bill. Different age. I mean, we're going to go to a 9-year next year,
right? And
then the year after that, we're probably going to go with a 6-year Green River mash bill.
Okay.
That we currently have aging in Owensboro. So it's going to change.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, that's to me, kind of going back to the pinhook thing. One of the conversations we had with Sean before was that he kind of looks at the releases like vintages, like with wines, where you're trying, it's not that you want to make the same product over and over and over. And eventually maybe you want to get to that point where you have a shelfer, this is your standard release that's there all the time on the shelf. Somebody can go and get it. But for releases like this, I mean, you want variety, you want differences, and that's what you're looking for. Like a wine, I mean, different years, you're going to have a different vintage, you're going to have a different flavor. Everything's going to be different about that. Even though it's going to be the same brand name, it's going to be a different experience, right?
Right.
So,
except for the proof.
Yeah, right.
That's the plan for now.
Yeah.
And the tentative plan is we probably won't put anything in the bottle that's less than 6 years old.
Okay.
And why? Because the term of a U.S. senator is
6 years.
6 years. Yeah.
That makes sense.
107 proof.
Yeah.
But lots of other things can change, including the mash bill.
So if we ever hear you guys talking about doing the Kentucky representative, then we know we should run because it's going to be a 2-year. No, I'm just kidding.
It'll be a rye.
It'll be a 2-year rye.
It'll be a 2-year rye. Okay. Oh.
Might be a Kentucky governor one day too.
All right.
But that would be a whiskey.
And they will take credit for everything everybody else does. I can guarantee that.
Okay, so that one.
We have ideas.
We have ideas. We don't have to. We'll talk about that more in the third round. I think it'd be fun to do that. So let's take a quick break. But Matt, final thoughts on this 7-year-old. What do you think?
It's been a great progression from 6 to 7. I'm excited to see where we go with 8.
Where we go with 8, no doubt about it. All right, guys, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Damon Thayer and Andre Regard, the co-founders of Kentucky Senator Bourbon, in just a minute.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3-Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final term of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live in the Bourbon Life studios is my head shaking buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there at the end of the Bourbon Life table?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great. It just wouldn't be a Bourbon Life podcast episode if I didn't give you at least one little eye roll, right?
I appreciate that. That's what you're here for, right?
That's tasting notes and the occasional eye roll, and I tip my hat and see myself out the door.
That's right. We'll see you later. See you next week, Mark. Now, we're having a great time tonight, man. This is a lot of fun. I love it when our guests are in the studio with us.
Yeah.
It's like a whole different feel. So it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And great guests we do have. The gentleman from Kentucky Senator Bourbon, co-founders Damon Thayer, and Andre Regard. Gentlemen, welcome back for our finale here.
Great to be back, and I'm excited to finish off this vertical.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is awesome. This has been a lot of fun.
Although I've never understood why we call it a vertical, because they're actually lined up horizontally. We were talking about that over drinks the other day, some friends of mine and I were like, that's horizontal. Why is it a vertical? Well, because it goes up in age.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That makes sense. I'm sitting here thinking, when you look at numbers, everything's lined up horizontally. You threw me for a loop there, Damon. Don't do that after I've had a couple drinks, man.
I waited.
Yeah,
I waited a while.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. So, Matt, I tell you what. We'll let Damon throw, because I was going to say, you tell everybody what we have poured up. We got the guys that actually made it, so they can tell us what we're going to be drinking this third round here.
Well, this is our latest release. This is our 8-year release, the Senator John Sherman Cooper release. And we're really excited about this because Senator Cooper was one of the most consequential Kentuckians of the 20th century. He was the first Republican to be elected to more than one term. In the U.S. Senate, he was elected to 2 non-consecutive terms, and then came back, was elected to 2 consecutive terms as third and fourth term. He is from Somerset in Pulaski County. He attended Center College, which is why the label is yellow, because
Matt, you can hold the bottle up there, man.
I would love to.
There you go.
Yep, those are the Center College colors. He was a judge, a state representative, a U.S. Senator, ambassador to East Germany, ambassador to India, a personal friend of then Senator and future President John F. Kennedy. He and his wife used to socialize in the 50s with JFK and Jackie O. Well, Jackie Kennedy later became Jackie O.
Right.
And after the unfortunate and tragic assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, he was appointed by President Johnson to serve on the Warren Commission that investigated the assassination.
Wow.
He also was the mentor to current U.S. Senator and Republican leader Mitch McConnell, and was very involved in the civil rights movement in 1964. Of course, the U.S. Senate and Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Senator Cooper was very involved in that. And Senator McConnell, if you ever read one of his books, his autobiography called The Long Game, you'll know that Senator Cooper played a pretty serious role in his life as a mentor. And so we thought this bourbon, getting up in age, deserved a really special name. And so we're excited to name it after Senator Cooper. Like we said in the earlier segment, Kentucky Senator Bourbon, serving up great Kentucky bourbon and a side of Kentucky history. Each release will educate people about the senators who have helped make history in Kentucky and in our country. And some of them will be more obscure, like Senator DeBoe.
Right.
Some of them will be giants, like Senator Alvin Barkley and Senator Cooper. Other guys played an important role in bourbon history, like Senator John G. Carlisle. But we've got 54 of them to choose from, so we got plenty to go.
Yeah, this is like a Schoolhouse Rock episode here as we get through them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I am a Schoolhouse Rock geek. I mean, I'm a geek in general, but Schoolhouse Rock, I refer to that often.
Yeah, no doubt.
There are a lot of people who should watch that video on how a bill becomes a law.
I'm an executive order. I'm just here. Where'd you come from?
I'm just here. I'm just here. I just got signed, and now I'm a law. Not really. That's great. So, Matt, let's talk about the nose on this one. What do you pick up on this one, on the 8-year-old? And again, we're talking about the same mash bill. We're talking about the same proof, 107. Same distillate, same aging warehouses down at Bardstown Bourbon. The only difference, another year added to it. So Matt, look at Matt.
I know.
He's so smart. He
saved a little bit from my 6 and my 7 year. I wanted to do the Andre vertical here, the full tasting.
Yeah.
And the 8, I think, strikes a nice balance between the 6 and the 7. Where the 6, we had a lot of those nice, sweet, kind of younger flavors. The 7, to me, was really bold, really fruit forward, kind of red wine spice. This sort of plays on both of them. At first, I thought it almost nosed a little bit closer to the 6 here, a little sweeter, a little more vanillas. But as it's getting some air in it, I think the maturity is really coming out, and I think it's starting to bring some more of that mature oak, a little bit of tobacco, like nice, sweet pipe tobacco coming through with it. Less of like that cornbread that we've had before, but like just a really nice refined grain, or like almost like a sweet like pancake type nose to it as well. Just like nice morning in the kitchen, breakfast aromas, but like really good mature oak, mature flavors, well-rounded, bold but balanced. So it's like bold but restraint.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you mentioned, the interplay between the 6 and the 7 and how you can pick out both of those in here. And I agree with that. I think it's a very nice balance of the two things that stood out for those, the 6 and the 7. And yeah, I mean, I agree. It's got the sweetness, but it's not like the cornbread sweetness like you talked about. Mm-hmm. The oak comes through, but it's I don't know. It's like a maple syrupy type of sweetness that comes through, with a little bit of the hint of oak. It's not as spice forward as that 7-year-old. I don't get hit with that real spiciness on the nose. Mm-hmm. We'll go in for the palate here in just a little bit. But yeah, man, overall, very, very nice, just in very balanced flavors there. So what about you? What do you get?
I mean, I love this bourbon.
Yeah.
It has a stronger mouthfeel.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a lingering, tingling mouthfeel. And I can still feel the burn, and it's been probably 90 seconds or 2 minutes since I had my sip. And I just think it gets better and better the longer we age it. And, I'm excited about a year from now when this bourbon will be 9 years old.
No doubt.
I'm excited that we're able to offer these aged bourbon products in the marketplace, because you don't see a lot of aging statements anymore.
Not at all.
And we're big on transparency. We tell people where our bourbon comes from. We put the aging statement on there, and there aren't very many 8-year-old bourbons out there that or at least claim it. I mean, we know that the big brands, Maker's Mark, Buffalo Trace, Four Roses, Woodford, they're a mix of 6 to 8 year bourbons.
Right.
They'll tell you that at the distillery, but they don't want to put it on the stamp because they want to have the option of putting a younger bourbon in there to get to the flavor profile that they're trying to reach. We're a little bit different. It doesn't make us better or the big brands bad. It doesn't. It just means that we're able to be more transparent, and I'm really proud of this.
Yeah,
I'm really proud of this. I just feel like our plan is coming to fruition.
That's got to be a great feeling.
What's going to be kind of fun, we mentioned earlier how we normally pull 6 barrels out. So for this particular group of bourbons, we have 7 barrels left. So next year, we'll actually pull all 7 barrels.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And we'll do a single barrel pick, we hope, with Liquor Barn again. But we're also going to pick one of those 7 barrels to age one additional year.
One more year.
And so we're going to have a true single barrel 10-year release.
Nice.
In the future. So we're super excited about that. That's the same time, that same year, we'll do a 6-year release as well. But I was drinking this bourbon with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and he said it kind of tastes, or it has the smell of a freshly cut hayfield in Kentucky on a summer day. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what are you talking about?
Was this one of your lawyer friends?
And it was just, it's kind of, after the hay's been cut in the morning, mm-hmm. and it's the afternoon, and you kind of go down that lane, and they've already maybe taken the hay and raked it up into the lines.
Yeah.
It's kind of that lingering flavor.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of an interesting description. Of course, another guy was like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
But you get those notes, and some people are like, oh, it tastes like hay or smells like hay, which isn't a bad note. People talk about barnyard. I mean, you can get like the smell of a barn. I mean, it smells
As long as it's not a goat.
As long as it's not like a dirty barn, but like the barn wood, the kind of sometimes you even get like maybe even a little mustiness, which is kind of a sign of age of some of the barrels, which isn't a bad thing. It's just a unique descriptor. But I mean, I can understand that. So let's kind of talk about some things that have been going on. You guys, we talked about the barrels you've got. You've got the 7 barrels left. So next year it'll be 5 in a batch, 1 single barrel, leaving 1 single barrel, which means you're going to have barrels from other places. I think, Damon, you alluded earlier, you mentioned Green River. So you guys want to talk a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yeah, I just double checked the aging statement on the contract to purchase those barrels. So as Andre said, a year from now, we will release 6 barrels in a 9-year release of Kentucky Senator Bourbon. We will set back our 25th barrel from this batch of Barton barrels. We will set it back, and in June of 2025, we will do a true single barrel release, a 10-year bourbon. Obviously, there aren't going to be very many bottles out on the market.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we have a summer like we're having so far this year, you might be scraping every stave of that barrel to get every last drop out of it.
That's right. With as hot as it's been, these summers that we're getting, we're going to get, the bourbon will expand. So we don't know how many bottles we'll get. However, later that year, we will have a new mash bill on the market because we have 50 barrels of Green River juice aging in Owensboro.
Okay.
And so what we will likely do for the ensuing 5 years, beginning in 2025, is there will be a late summer, early fall release of Kentucky Senator Bourbon.
Gotcha.
And we will do a 10 barrel release. So you can see we're slowly scaling up.
Okay.
So for 5 years, 2025, 26, 27, 28, and 29, we will be able to do 10 barrel releases of a 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old bourbon.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we have something really exciting planned on the back end of that. But that's the thing with the bourbon business. You have to have a long-term plan.
Sure.
But that's where we are right now. We will have 2 more releases, a normal release and then a special release of this Barton juice, and then we will transition into a 6-year Green River juice bourbon, distill it in our bottles.
Gotcha.
And it'll be a wider release because there'll be 10 barrels of each.
Yep.
To get us through the next 5 years.
So that was, obviously that was Jacob was there, right? Jacob Call was the master distiller at Green River. He's no longer there. And Bardstown actually, or Prisker, whoever, I don't know how that worked out. Does Bardstown actually own Green River?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Bardstown Bourbon Company and its president, Mark Irwin, purchased Green River, and Mark is now the president of both distilleries.
I got you. So, so the distillation came, and we've had Jacob on the show before. We've had him on twice, actually. And, love what he's doing. He's at Western Kentucky Distilling now, I believe. They just opened that up, he and his dad. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So love what he's done, the products he's put out. Everything I've ever had from Jacob, I've always been impressed with. So
one of the things we realized as we started getting the appreciation for the folks up in Covington and now the folks in Somerset is originally we wanted to get into contract distillation. We really don't have a game plan to own a distillery at this point. It's just not in the next 8 or 10 year profile. Mm-hmm. Originally, we were going to go to one of the larger distilleries and do, most of them have a 500 barrel minimum. So we were going to do, one lot, 500 barrels. That's what we're going to have and see what happens. But what we've picked up on is this idea of diversity. So we've changed our model, and now we're looking at getting bourbons from various distilleries, and we're super excited because we're actually doing our first contract distillation. So yesterday, we've entered a contract with Whiskey Thief, who's in Franklin County, right off the interstate. And we cooked our first contract distillation yesterday. It went to the fermenter today, and they will make about 50 barrels in that group, and then we're going to go to a different distillery for the next 50 barrels.
All right.
And we may kind of volley back and forth a little bit, and then bring a third distillery in. So we're really excited about expanding and
nice.
doing that.
So now the Green River distillate, is it Do you know, is the mash bill, is it the same as this existing mash bill, or do we know?
I don't believe it's the same as this mash bill.
So it's different mash bill?
Different mash bill.
Okay, gotcha. And then your what you're doing with Whiskey
The
Thief.
contract distillation, we went through a few mash bills, and we actually settled back on the mash bill we had for our 15-year release.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. So what's that, Damon? 78.5, 13.5, and 4% barley. Rye.
I'm looking it up right now. that 78.5% corn, 13% rye, 8.5% malted barley. We won some really nice awards, and that was the mash bill that helped launch us. So we think it's going to be really cool 6 years from now when we promote our first contract distillate in our barrel, that we're going to go back to where we started with that mash bill.
Yeah. So now will the goal then be, because we're talking like these 5-year plans. So you've got the barrels right now from Green River that you'll use, you'll start in 25. There'll be 6, 7, so it'll be 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
Right.
So the goal then would be 30. What you're making now with Whiskey Thief would be... would only
6 years from this fall.
Okay.
So basically, it's going to take, because of it has a pot still, so it's limited production.
Right, okay.
It's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks to get us to 50 barrels.
Okay.
But so we're going to likely use October 1 as the birth date of this new distillate.
Yeah.
So September-ish, October 1 of 2029 is when our plan is to release our first 6-year-old bourbon that has been contract distilled at Whiskey Thief.
So then the plan, the next partner, would you then do the 5 years of Whiskey Thief and then 5 years after that?
No, we would. I think when we get 6 or 7 years down the road, we hope to maybe do a couple of releases.
I got you. Okay. All right. Okay.
And Whiskey Thief, we're going to do 50 barrels, but we're also going to do another 50 barrels 6 months later. So.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we're about to significantly accelerate our bourbon inventory.
Okay.
And at the same time, because we've had success and we've been able to sell bourbon, we also have an opportunity fund where we're going to have some cash on the side, and we're going to buy, if the right bourbon becomes available that we think fits, it's a good bourbon and we like it. We anticipate that we will also have some releases off-timed releases based on opportunities that present themselves.
So if another 15-year-old tote just happens to rear its head, then you'd be like, take my money now, right?
Correct. We that's our plan. We have a plan set for the releases based on the bourbon we currently possess, as well as the bourbon we're currently making. But if something cool comes along, we want to be able to buy it. So we may have more than one release a year. But once we get into the contract distillate 6 years from now, we would hope to get to the point where we have 3 or 4 releases a year and expand outside of Kentucky to have into the big bourbon states. Probably start in the non-control states. They're easier to deal with than dealing with the government control states. Yep. But that's the plan, and we may, in Q4 of this year, we may lay down 50 barrels with Sam Rock's team at Bluegrass Distillers if they get everything up and running at their new distillery in Midway. And we're talking to other distilleries about doing 50 to 100 barrel batches for us. We'd like to lay down in our business plan 3 to 4 batches of 50 to 100 barrels each annually. Okay. So you can see how 6 to 10 years from now, we're really going to scale this thing up.
Yeah. So we were talking at the end of round 2, and kind of joke, because I made a joke about the U.S. representatives, the 2-year terms, and then you said, well, maybe talking about rye, and then talking about the governorship, which is 4 years. So you guys got plans in those arenas? I mean, can you talk about?
We can talk about it a little bit. We spoke right off the top about, well, what happens if we come across a good rye? Yeah. Well, we don't want to dilute the Kentucky Senator Bourbon. So we could have the representative, and we kind of played around. Governor's a 4-year term. So we have those ideas, and we also have played around a little bit with the ideas of other states if an opportunity comes along, because people like the collectability of it. That's what we've learned. People like my dad was from Somerset. I grew up in northern Kentucky, and I got to get the Carlisle. So we've played around with some other ideas. We've actually trademarked Louisiana Senator as a potential opportunity.
Okay.
Nice.
So, and we're playing around 4 or 5 other states. So our focus is Kentucky Senator Bourbon, but it's a big marketplace out there, and we think there's some opportunities.
Very cool.
Those are known as brand extensions in the business.
So there could be a representative.
Oh, see what you did there, Matt.
Yeah.
See what you did there.
Yeah.
Matt coming off that
Telling you,
triathlon
yeah,
that he
comes
just
off the-
competed in. He is
Yeah.
sharp tonight.
He is,
Hey,
man.
look
You
at
got to
that.
think about something on that bicycle.
That's right. I knew this
miles, man.
episode was coming up.
He's thinking my 45 minutes on the elliptical this morning looked puny.
Oh man! So let's talk about the palate and the finish on this, because we're actually almost at the end of our 3rd term already. So Matt, what are you picking up down there, man?
This is another one that hits with some good spice right up front. I think, Mark, we'd said on the last one that it's starting to drink a little bit more of the proof. I think this one, the maturity from the barrel brings a little bit more of the proof points with it at that 107. Nice and spicy on the front of the palate. Those peppercorns, a little bit of the cinnamon, the baking spices come right through. And then Damon, as you were saying, super oily, just really like a really fatty, unctuous coating on the mouthfeel. Just coats.
You can see it on the legs, on the glass.
Oh, most certainly. This is just like really decadent in that regard. Then I pick up like kind of like a sweetness from like kettle corn. Kind of plays that to me. And then there's like
I like it.
a date or like fig jam, kind of like a sweet fruit jam kind of at the end before we get back to that spicy finish.
Yeah. It's funny because you were talking about somebody had said hay or whatever. And it was like when I tasted it in my head, I was like, I envisioned like fresh cut hay all of a sudden, but I'm not getting that now. So it could have just been the power of you talking about that. And in my mind, I'm envisioning, this fresh cut field. But initially I thought, I was like, I can see that. But now it's like completely shifted. Like Matt said, the spice just comes through up front, but there's a really nice sweetness that's coming through as well. Like he was talking about, just the fruit combinations that come through with that spiciness as well. Very nice. Just a really, and it's been so much fun to see how this has progressed, which makes me just, so excited for the 9-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the 10-year-old, man.
Well, of course, Mark, you were part of the production team for this selection. You were at the event, which
right.
Damon and I, when we did the first one, we invited some of our friends and investors. But as we've gotten more involved in the industry and met good folks like you and other people who write about what's going on in the industry, we've kind of changed the profile of who we invite over.
Yeah. And
it's really a fun event. I mean, to go there and have a dozen folks and listen to what Brad has to say, but also other folks that are very knowledgeable about bourbon to participate in helping us kind of go through this has been fantastic.
And Brad is he's like Yoda.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
it's like I'm just waiting for his next words to come out and to watch him swirling around our distillate in his glass, and then you can see him thinking, and then he speaks, and we're all like, oh.
Dave, disclosure. Damon was at Disney Star Wars this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well,
I am also a Disney geek.
That's nothing wrong with that. Here's the funny story, because I was taking pictures while we were down there, and just snapping pictures here and there. I got this picture of Damon. He's just looking at Brad, and I actually posted it on Instagram. And I'm like, you need to find yourself someone in life that looks at you the way Damon Thayer looks at Brad Williams. Because Brad's got his glass, and he's obviously talking to this thing, and Damon just has this look, and it's just awesome.
That's my favorite post of the year, Mark. It's slightly embarrassing, but also accurate.
Yeah, no, that was great. I had to do that, but it was a great experience, and I appreciate you guys.
I think Damon and I both pinch ourselves a little bit that this idea that started in 2017, that we were under a timeline because of some trademark issues, and we have to deal with COVID, and then we had to deal with an ice storm, and we had to get it done, and then we're like, is this even going to work? And is it going to sell? And it's really all come together, and it's been a fantastic experience. And personally, to be able to go around and talk to my friends and say, look, I own a bourbon, and it sells, and there's a lot of cool publicity about it, has really been a neat life experience.
I'm sure. I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Honestly. So.
Well, thanks to people like you who've supported our brand and given us an opportunity to have a forum like this to to talk about it is so important to us building a brand. And building a brand means being able to sell bottles of bourbon, but also being able to tell a story, because so much of bourbon is having a cool story. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Elmer T. Lee is a great bourbon, but it's also named after, one of the giants of the Kentucky bourbon industry.
Right.
And so that's why people want to buy that bottle of bourbon. That's why you can't find it. That's why I haven't seen one in the wild in about 3.5 years.
Well, as I saw earlier this year, a great story's not told, it's distilled.
Oh, yeah.
You went to the Jameson bourbon or Jameson whiskey
I wasn't
distillery.
going to plug that.
It's okay. They age their Irish whiskey in Kentucky bourbon barrels over there. I saw it myself.
there you go.
Saw it with my own eyes.
There you go. So, guys, we're at the end of the round here and end of the show. But before we wrap it up, we kind of talk about the future, obviously, where you guys are headed, because that's usually the question, what's the future look like? Well, we've really kind of talked about that, which is great. You guys got a lot of exciting plans, it sounds like. You got a great structure in place. You're looking forward, 5 years at a time and even beyond that, which is great. And I'm excited to see where you guys go. And I just enjoy getting the chance to hang out with you guys because, like you both, just great guys. You're having fun doing what you do. I guess I can relate to you guys because, you work full-time jobs. You do other things, but yet you pursue bourbon as your passion, which I think is just spectacular and what you guys have been able to do. And it's really cool. So yeah, maybe I'm a little jealous. I need to find somebody that looks at you guys that looks at me the way I look at you guys.
Okay, it's getting a little deep here.
Yeah, right.
Give me another drink.
One of the coolest things is we talked about how Covington was excited about the Carlisle release.
Yeah, right.
Somerset, Kentucky in Pulaski County is really excited about this. They invited me down to talk to their monthly Chamber of Commerce, and they don't do small Chamber of Commerce meetings in Somerset. It's like 300 people down there in the Center for Rural Development. And I didn't give a political speech. I went down and talked about bourbon for 20 minutes, and it was awesome. And they're throwing an event for us on August 22nd in the historic Virginia Theater, which has been revamped by the city under the leadership of Mayor Alan Keck. And we're going to do a toast to Senator John Sherman Cooper. Some of his family members are going to be there. Chief Justice Vinters, former Supreme Court Justice Vinters, whose law office is right in downtown Somerset, was a friend of Senator Cooper's. And he's going to give a little talk about the Cooper family. And we're going to do a toast, and it's sponsored by the Pulaski County Somerset Chamber of Commerce and the Somerset Pulaski Economic Development Authority, SPEDA.
Yeah.
And I've got two friends down there, Bobby Clue, who runs the chamber, and former State Senator Chris Girdler, who runs SPEDA. And they're really excited about this. The community's really embracing it. So that's something that we're learning as we go forward, and we'll consider the community involvement as we select a senator. And the other thing is, we haven't done any paid media of any kind. It's all been through podcasts like this and social media, but we're doing our first sponsorship on September 3rd at Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Simpson County.
Okay.
It will be Kentucky Senator Bourbon Day at the races. We're having some special etchings done on our bottles, and the trophies that day will be our Kentucky Senator Bourbon bottle, and we're going to have all the elements of a sponsorship, ads in the program, and they said you can have a Kentucky Senator Bourbon cocktail at our bars. I said, the cocktail is drink it neat or on the rocks. We don't put an 8-year-old bourbon in an old fashioned.
Right.
Well,
So-
Damon and I are both very excited because we're both horse racing fans.
Sure.
And there's only 7 race days. Mm-hmm. So it's not just putting your name out there and saying I want to be a sponsor. They had to vet us. They had to choose us.
Right. There's
other people that want to be. It's a great race meet. And it's just super exciting because we get to combine two things we both love, which is horse racing and bourbon.
And it's one of the best horse racing meets in North America. The purses are huge down there. Only 7 days of racing. It's European style racing on an undulating grass or turf course.
Oh, okay.
So we chose to do the sponsorship because the elite nature and super premium nature of the race meet combines with our brand. So that's why we chose it, because it fits well with our brand that we're trying to cultivate.
Very nice. Congratulations. That sounds like a lot of fun.
September 3rd, we'll be at Kentucky Downs.
That sounds great. We'll be there. No. Matt's like, yeah, we'll
come on down.
We'll road trip, right?
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. We could do that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So final thoughts before we wrap it up here tonight. Close it out.
I think Andre said it earlier. I'm still sort of pinching myself. This was just an idea that I cooked up one day, and I told Andre about it, and he believed in it. And there have been so many people who have believed in it every step of the way. From my friend Bill Thomas, who owns Jack Rose Dining Saloon in Washington D.C. Right. It's the only place you can get some Kentucky Senator Bourbon outside of Kentucky. It's one of the best bourbon bars in North America.
That was neat. I was there this weekend to pull their bourbon menu out and see Kentucky Senator Bourbon in bold letters, and then 6-year release.
Oh yeah.
7-year release, 8-year release.
Nice.
So all these people, from Kentucky Eagle to Bluegrass Distillers to Liquor Barn, all these people and all these organizations, they believed in us. And now every time someone buys one of our bottles of bourbon, that's a statement of belief in what we're doing. And it's what I dreamt of, but didn't know if it would come true. I wasn't confident that it would come true. I was hopeful that it would come true. And so it's pretty cool that, 2 guys, one from Louisiana, one from Michigan, who moved to Kentucky to pursue our careers and raise our kids here and make a life, are now involved in one of the 2 signature industries that really Kentucky is known for around the world.
Right. Yep. Very cool. Andre, anything you want to add?
Oh, no. I mean, Damon said it great. We hope our horse racing sponsorship is great. So maybe sometime in the future we can go to England and go to Royal Ascot and be a bourbon sponsor for the day. I just think it's going to bring us great places. We're super excited about the future, the people that are involved, the opportunities we're going to have to do events and whatnot, and just going to try to make some great bourbon. It was so neat today and yesterday and today to go to the distillery and say, this isn't something that we were fortunate to buy on the wholesale market. Right. Where this is actually our bourbon.
It's yours.
We've worked with. They've got the distiller there is a great guy, Hunter. Pretty young guy. He's been there for 10 years. We've tasted some of his 10-year-old bourbon. It's fantastic. Matter of fact, Whiskey Thief got an award, a major award this year for having one of the best single barrel bourbons in the country. So just all of that type of stuff is just exciting.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm excited to see what happens, where you guys go. You're obviously passionate about it, so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch what happens.
If people want to learn more about us, they can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. It seems like Instagram is the place to be for bourbon, but we do Facebook and Twitter, and also our website, KentuckySenatorBourbon.com, where everything is posted on there as a repository of our history.
Very nice.
If you're looking for the Twitter, you actually have to go to X.
There's no flashing sign anymore to lead you there. They made them take it down, so sorry about that. Matt, before we close it out, man, final thoughts?
Hey, gents, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us and with our guests and go through everything. You talk about feeling so fortunate about having so many people back you and believe in you. Well, a bottle can only sell itself so far without great people behind the bottle itself. What would a brand be? And seeing the passion that you two both bring to this, and just your personalities and the way you interact with people, the way you respect your product, and you're very forthcoming, open, honest about everything. It's hard not to believe in the product and the end game, and I can't wait for another year from now to see what things are doing. And you all have a super bright future, a really dynamic brand, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing where it heads.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. It's great to sit down with you guys once again and enjoy some great pours of what you guys are putting out. And like Matt said, really excited to see what happens over the next, well, for me, not just the next 2 years, next 5 years, 10 years, to see gosh, I'm going to be old. But I'm excited to see what happens.
When I got involved in horse racing, Mr. Catesby Clay, who just turned 100 years old, told me one of the beautiful things about horse racing is it keeps you young, because it's about a 3-year cycle. But you breed a mare, you have the foal, takes at least 2 years to make the races. It's really about a 4-year cycle. Then I got involved in bourbon. I mean, we're sitting here and we're talking about things we hope happen in 6 and 7 and 8 years.
Yeah.
it's a long time away.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun. And again, just appreciate you guys being here. And I do want to thank all of our sponsors, of course. So we appreciate everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without their help and support. And of course, you, our listeners, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Like Matt says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is, you take the time to listen to us. We appreciate, or watch us now on YouTube. We appreciate you doing that. And you can always find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can always email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your suggestions for shows or any comments you have, as long as they're positive and nice and happy ones. If you feel so inclined, please feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. With that said, I want to wrap it up. Send us something for a tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.